The letter arrived on a cold Monday morning. It wasn't unusual for mail to pile up on the old wooden table in the hallway. Bills, advertisements, the occasional handwritten note from distant relatives, it was all part of the routine. But this envelope, it was different. Thick, cream-colored, sealed with a dark red wax stamp, and addressed in handwriting I hadn't seen in over 15 years. My name is Daniel Harper, and that letter was the beginning of the end of everything I thought I knew about my family. I stood there for a long time, just staring at it. My fingers hovered over the envelope, hesitant, almost afraid. Because deep down, I knew whatever was inside would change things. It always does. I finally broke the seal. Inside was a single sheet of paper. And 6 words that made my heart stop. Your grandfather left you everything. The man we never spoke about, my grandfather, William Harper, wasn't just a distant memory. He was a forbidden subject. No one talked about him, not at family dinners, not during holidays, not even in quiet, late-night conversations when truths usually slipped out. It was like he had been erased. I remembered asking my father about him once when I was maybe 10 years old. "Where is Grandpa?" I had said. My father's face changed instantly. His expression hardened, his voice cold. That man is not part of this family anymore. That was it. No explanation, no story, just silence. And over time, I learned not to ask. But now, here I was, holding proof that he had never forgotten us. Or at least, he hadn't forgotten me. The conditions, my hands trembled slightly as I read the rest of the letter. It wasn't written by my grandfather himself, but by a law firm in Chicago. Formal, precise, cold. It stated that William Harper had passed away 2 weeks earlier. And according to his will, I was the sole beneficiary of his entire estate. But there was a catch. There's always a catch. To claim the inheritance, I had to be present at the reading of the will in person. And not just me. Every member of the Harper family was required to attend. My stomach tightened. That meant my father, my Aunt Susan, my Uncle Robert, people who hadn't sat in the same room together in over a decade. People who barely spoke, who carried years of resentment, anger, and something darker, something unresolved. And now, suddenly, we were all being called back together. By a man we were never supposed to speak about. Old wounds, fresh blood. I called my father that afternoon. He didn't pick up at first. He rarely did. When he finally answered, his voice was tired, distracted. "Daniel, everything okay?" I didn't know how to say it, so I just said it. "I got a letter about Grandpa." Silence, not the normal kind. Not the kind where someone is thinking about what to say next. This was heavy, thick, suffocating. "He's dead," I added quietly. Another pause. Then, finally, my father spoke. "What did the letter say?" "He left me everything." The reaction wasn't what I expected. No anger, no surprise, just a low, bitter laugh. "Of course he did," I frowned. "What does that mean?" But he didn't answer my question. Instead, he said something that sent a chill down my spine. "You don't understand what you're stepping into, Daniel." The gathering 3 days later, I found myself standing in front of a tall, gray building in downtown Chicago. The law firm's name was engraved in steel beside the glass doors. It looked exactly how you'd expect a place like this to look: cold, professional, emotionless. Inside, everything was quiet. Too quiet. I was the first to arrive, or so I thought. As I stepped into the waiting room, I saw her, my Aunt Susan. She looked older, of course. We all do. But her eyes, sharp, calculating, were exactly the same. She looked at me like I was a stranger, or worse, like I was competition. "Well," she said, crossing her arms, "looks like you got the letter too." I nodded. Before I could respond, the door opened again. My father walked in, and behind him, my Uncle Robert. For the first time in 15 years, the Harper family was in the same room. And you could feel it. The tension, the history, the things left unsaid. It was like standing in a room full of gasoline, waiting for someone to strike a match. The first crack the lawyer entered shortly after. A tall man in his 50s, perfectly dressed, perfectly composed. "Good afternoon," he said. "Thank you all for coming." No one replied. He didn't seem surprised. "Let's begin," he continued, opening a thick folder. "This is the last will and testament of William Harper." My heart pounded in my chest. This was it. The moment everything would be revealed. The moment we'd finally understand why. Why he left. Why no one spoke about him. Why he chose me. The lawyer adjusted his glasses and began to read. But before he could finish the first paragraph, my Uncle Robert slammed his hand on the table. "This is a joke," he said, his voice filled with anger. "He doesn't get to do this." The lawyer paused. "I assure you, sir, this is entirely legal." "I don't care about legal," Robert snapped. "That man destroyed this family." My father stood up. "And whose fault was that?" he said quietly. The room froze, years of silence, breaking in a single moment. And suddenly it wasn't about the inheritance anymore. It was about the past. And whatever had happened all those years ago, it wasn't buried. Not even close. The truth begins to surface. The lawyer cleared his throat, trying to regain control. "There is additional information you should all be aware of." Something in his tone made my chest tighten. "This inheritance," he continued, "comes with specific conditions." I felt a strange sense of dread. "What kind of conditions?" I asked. He looked directly at me. "The kind that may change how you see your family forever." No one spoke. The lawyer's words hung in the air like a storm about to break. "The kind that may change how you see your family forever." I felt my throat go dry. Around me, I could sense it. Everyone was thinking the same thing, but no one wanted to say it out loud. "What conditions?" my Aunt Susan asked sharply. The lawyer adjusted the papers in front of him, his expression calm, almost too calm for what was coming. "Mr. William Harper included a clause," he began, "that requires full disclosure before the inheritance can be claimed." My father frowned. "Full disclosure of what?" The lawyer looked up. "Of the truth." A truth buried for 15 years. Something shifted in the room. You could feel it, like the past itself had just been invited back in. "The will," the lawyer continued, "cannot be executed until a specific event from 15 years ago is addressed and acknowledged by all present parties." My Uncle Robert let out a bitter laugh. "You've got to be kidding me." "No," the lawyer replied calmly. "I'm not." I leaned forward. "What event?" But before the lawyer could answer, my father spoke. "No," just one word, firm, final. But it wasn't directed at the lawyer. It was directed at the past. The night everything changed, the lawyer didn't stop. 15 years ago," he said, "there was an incident involving the Harper family. A financial dispute that led to the separation of Mr. William Harper from the rest of you." "That's one way to put it," Susan muttered. My heart was pounding now. Financial dispute. That didn't match the silence, the anger, the way my father reacted all those years. There was more to it, a lot more. "What exactly happened?" I asked, my voice steady but tight. The lawyer looked down at the file, then back at us. "According to Mr. Harper's records, a sum of money, approximately $2.3 million, went missing." The room went still. Even the air felt heavier. "Missing," I repeated. "Yes," the lawyer said. "Withdrawn from a joint family investment account." My eyes moved slowly around the room. My father, my aunt, my uncle. All of them suddenly very interested in not making eye contact. "The accusation it wasn't missing," my Uncle Robert snapped suddenly. "It was stolen." There it was, the word no one wanted to say. "Stolen? Watch your mouth," my father said quietly, his voice low but dangerous. "Oh, I've watched it long enough," Robert shot back. 15 years of silence is enough, don't you think? Susan stepped in. "This isn't helping." "No, what isn't helping," Robert continued, "is pretending we don't all know what really happened." I felt like I was watching something crack open. Something that had been sealed for years. "What do you mean?" I asked. Robert looked straight at me. "I mean your grandfather didn't just disappear," he said. "He was pushed out." My stomach dropped. "Pushed out? Why?" Robert didn't answer immediately. Instead, he looked at my father. "Tell him." The blame game. My father didn't move, didn't speak, didn't even look at me. "I'm not doing this," he said finally. Of course you're not, Robert said with a sarcastic laugh, because that would mean telling him the truth. Enough, Susan snapped. This isn't the way to— No, this is exactly the way, Robert interrupted. He deserves to know. My heart was racing now. Know what? I demanded. Robert took a step closer. That your grandfather was accused of stealing that money. The words hit like a punch. Accused? Yes, he said, and not just by anyone. He glanced again at my father. By his own son. The first shock, I turned slowly toward my father. Is that true? He didn't answer right away, but he didn't deny it either. And sometimes silence says everything. You accused him, I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. It wasn't that simple, my father said finally. Then explain it, I pushed. But before he could, the lawyer spoke again. There's more, 3 simple words, and somehow they felt heavier than everything else. The twist: no one expected the money, the lawyer continued, was never recovered. Robert scoffed. Exactly. But, the lawyer added, raising a finger slightly, there is evidence suggesting that Mr. William Harper did not take it. The room froze. What? Susan said. My father looked up sharply. That's not possible. The lawyer opened another document. New financial records uncovered shortly before Mr. Harper's death indicate that the funds were transferred, but not to any account in his name. I felt my pulse in my ears. If he didn't take it, I said slowly, then who did? The lawyer didn't answer. Not directly. Instead, he said something far worse. The inheritance, he explained, will only be released once the person responsible is identified. A long silence followed. Then, almost instinctively, everyone started looking at each other. Not with confusion, but with suspicion. The family turns on itself. It happened quietly at first. A glance, a shift in posture, a subtle step back, and then suddenly it was there, distrust. Accusation, fear. Are you seriously suggesting one of us? Susan started. I'm not suggesting anything, the lawyer interrupted. I'm stating the conditions set forth in the will. Robert laughed, but there was no humor in it. Oh, this is perfect, he said. Just perfect. My father ran a hand over his face, clearly shaken. This is insane. But deep down, I knew it was, because something about all of this felt real, too real, like the truth had been hiding in plain sight all along. Waiting for this exact moment to come out. The realization, I looked around the room again. At my family, people I thought I knew, people I trusted. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't sure about any of them. If the money wasn't stolen by Grandpa, I said slowly, then someone in this room is lying. No one argued. No one denied it. Because now we all knew this wasn't just about inheritance anymore. This was about betrayal. The silence in the room wasn't just uncomfortable anymore. It was dangerous. No one moved. No one spoke. But everything had changed. A few minutes ago, we were a broken family forced into the same room. Now, we were something worse, a room full of suspects. The eyes start talking. I could feel it, the shift in energy. My Aunt Susan avoided looking at anyone directly, her fingers tapping nervously against the table. My Uncle Robert stood near the window, arms crossed, jaw tight, staring outside like he was trying to escape without actually leaving. And my father, he looked different. Not angry, not defensive. But uneasy. That was new, and it didn't sit right with me. The first question, I broke the silence. All right, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Let's stop pretending. No one responded, but I had their attention. The money didn't just disappear, I continued. And if Grandpa didn't take it, then someone here knows something. Robert let out a dry laugh. You're finally catching up. I ignored him. Instead, I looked at my father. Did you ever actually see proof? I asked. That he took the money, my father hesitated. That was all the answer I needed. You didn't, I said. It wasn't about proof, he replied quickly. It was about what made sense at the time. No, I said firmly. It was about what you wanted to believe. Cracks in the story. Susan stood up suddenly. This is going nowhere. But her voice wasn't as strong as she wanted it to be. Sit down, Robert said sharply. For once, let's finish something. She glared at him but didn't argue. I turned back to my father. If there was no proof, then why were you so sure? He rubbed his forehead, clearly under pressure. Because the money was gone, he said. And he was the only one who had access. That's not true, Robert cut in immediately. We all looked at him. What do you mean? I asked. Robert exhaled slowly, like he'd been holding this in for years. He wasn't the only one, he said. The hidden access the lawyer looked up from his notes, suddenly interested. Please elaborate, he said. Robert nodded slightly. That account, he explained, was a joint investment account. It required 2 authorized signatures for large withdrawals. My heart skipped. 2, yes, he said. Grandpa and, he stopped. The room leaned forward without moving. And who? I pressed. Robert's eyes shifted, not to my father, not to Susan, to me. And for a split second, I felt something cold run through my veins. The name that changed everything, it was your mother, Robert said quietly. The world tilted. What? My voice barely came out. Your mother, he repeated. She was the second authorized signer. I shook my head immediately. No, that's not possible. But even as I said it, something didn't feel right. Because my mother had always been careful with money, almost too careful. Why wasn't this ever mentioned? I asked, my voice rising. Because she wasn't supposed to be involved, Susan said quickly. Then why was she on the account? I shot back. No one answered. And that silence was louder than anything. A memory resurfaces suddenly, something hit me. A memory, faint, blurry. But there, I was young, maybe 9 or 10. I remembered my parents arguing late at night, not loudly, but intensely. My mother's voice shaking. My father saying something like, "You shouldn't have touched it." At the time, I didn't understand. Now, it felt like a piece of a puzzle falling into place. The pressure builds. I turned to my father again. Did you know? I asked. He didn't answer. Did you know she had access to that account? Still nothing. Dad, yes, he snapped finally. The word echoed in the room. I knew, he admitted. My chest tightened. And you still blamed Grandpa. His eyes filled with something I had never seen before. Guilt. I didn't have a choice, he said quietly. There's always a choice, I replied. Not when you're trying to protect your family, he said. The first real suspect, protect your family. The words hung in the air, and suddenly, everything shifted again. You're saying, I began slowly, that you knew Mom could have taken the money, and you still let everyone believe it was him. No one spoke, but now no one needed to. Because the truth was starting to form, and it was pointing somewhere none of us were ready to look. The unthinkable possibility she wouldn't do that, I said quickly. She's not like that. But even as I spoke, doubt crept in. Robert didn't say anything this time. He didn't need to. Susan looked away. My father stayed silent. And that silence, it felt like confirmation. The lawyer's final blow. The lawyer cleared his throat. There is one more detail, he said carefully. I almost didn't want to hear it, but I had to. What? I asked. He looked directly at me. Your mother, he said, withdrew a portion of the funds 2 days before the full amount disappeared. My heart stopped. A portion, I repeated. Yes, he said, a smaller transfer, documented, signed. My hands went cold. So she did take money, Robert said quietly. No, I whispered. No, there has to be an explanation. But now, even I wasn't sure. The breaking point, I stepped back slightly, trying to process everything. My grandfather accused, my father hiding the truth. My mother connected to the missing money. This wasn't just a family secret anymore. This was something much bigger, something darker. And for the first time, I realized something that scared me more than anything else. I don't know my own family, I said. No one argued. Because now, we were all starting to realize the same thing. I couldn't breathe. It felt like the walls were closing in, like the room itself was rejecting everything I thought was real. My mother took money, I said, my voice shaking. No, there's something missing here. There has to be. Because the alternative. The alternative meant that everything I believed about her, about us, was a lie. The silence that said too much. I looked at my father. "Say something," I demanded. He didn't. His silence felt heavier than any words he could have said. "Dad," I pressed again, "tell me this isn't what it looks like." Finally, he spoke, but not in the way I expected. "She didn't steal it," he said quietly. Relief hit me for a split second. But it didn't last. "Then what did she do?" I asked. He closed his eyes briefly. "She tried to fix something that was already broken." The secret debt. The lawyer stepped in, sensing the moment. "There are records," he said, "indicating that your mother withdrew approximately $200,000 from the account." I swallowed hard. "For what?" The lawyer hesitated. Then he said it. "To pay off a private debt." The words echoed in my mind. A debt, my mother. "That doesn't make sense," I said. "She never told anyone." "Exactly," Susan interrupted. "Because she couldn't." I turned to her sharply. "What does that mean?" Susan looked at my father, for permission, for confirmation, for something. And when he didn't stop her, she spoke. "The hidden life. Your mother wasn't who you thought she was," Susan said carefully. Anger surged instantly. "Don't say that." "I'm not trying to hurt you," she replied. "I'm trying to tell you the truth." "Then say it clearly." She took a breath. "Before all of this, before the money went missing, your mother was involved in something." My chest tightened. "What kind of something?" Susan's voice dropped. "Something risky." "The reveal. She had a business," Susan continued. "A side investment your father didn't fully approve of." I looked at my dad. His silence confirmed it. "What kind of business?" I asked again. But this time, it was Susan who answered. It was Robert. "She was investing in a startup," he said. "High risk. High reward." "That's not a crime," I said quickly. "No," Robert agreed, "but losing money that is yours is." The words hit hard. "You're saying she lost the money?" "No," he said. "I'm saying she owed money." The pressure she faced, everything started to connect. The late-night arguments, the tension, the fear I didn't understand as a kid. "She borrowed from the family account," I asked slowly. "She took what she thought she could return," my father said. "But she couldn't," I finished. He nodded. "And then?" I asked. No one answered immediately. Because this was the part no one wanted to say out loud. "The real betrayal when the rest of the money disappeared," Robert said finally. "It was easy to point fingers." "At Grandpa," I whispered. "Yes," he said. I felt sick. "So you all just let it happen," I said, looking around the room. "It wasn't that simple," Susan said. "It looks pretty simple from where I'm standing," I shot back. "You protected her." "No," my father said suddenly. "I protected you." I froze. "What?" He stepped closer. "You were just a kid," he said. "If the truth came out, it would have destroyed everything." "So instead," I said, my voice breaking, "you destroyed someone else." The guilt no one escaped. My father didn't deny it. None of them did, because now the truth was clear. My grandfather didn't leave. He was blamed, pushed out, abandoned, all because of something my mother started but didn't finish. But something still didn't add up. I turned back to the lawyer. "Wait," I said, "this still doesn't explain everything." He raised an eyebrow slightly. "What do you mean?" "The amount," I said. "You said my mom took $200,000. That is correct. But $2.3 million went missing," I said. The room went silent again, because now we were back to the real question. "Where did the rest go?" The twist that changed everything. The lawyer looked down at his file, then back at us. And for the first time, he didn't look completely in control. "According to the records," he said slowly, "the remaining funds were transferred in a separate transaction." "To who?" I asked. He hesitated, and that hesitation said everything. "To an account," he said carefully, "that belongs to someone in this room." The air turned cold. No one moved, no one breathed, because now this wasn't about the past anymore. This was about betrayal at a whole new level. "The accusation returns who?" Robert demanded. "Yes," Susan added, her voice tense. "Who was it?" I didn't say anything. I just watched, waited. Because deep down, I knew this was it. The moment everything would fall apart completely. The lawyer looked at the document one last time. Then he said a name, and when he did, everything changed. The lawyer didn't speak right away, and that silence, it was unbearable. "Say it," Robert demanded, his voice sharp, almost desperate. "Who was it?" Susan stood frozen, her arms wrapped tightly around herself like she was bracing for impact. My father didn't move at all, and me. I felt like my entire life was hanging on a single word. The name the lawyer finally looked up. His eyes landed on my father, and then he said it. The remaining funds were transferred to an account under the name Michael Harper. The room exploded. "Denial, that's a lie," my father snapped instantly, but it didn't sound convincing. Not fully. "Not anymore." Robert let out a harsh, humorless laugh. "Of course it was you." "That's not true," my father insisted. "I didn't take that money." "Then how did it end up in your account?" Susan demanded, her voice shaking. "I don't know," he shot back, but no one believed him, not completely. Because the truth had a way of showing itself, even when people tried to hide it. The weight of evidence, the lawyer remained calm. "There are signed transfer documents," he said. "Verified." "That doesn't mean I authorized it," my father argued. "It means your credentials were used," the lawyer replied. The distinction was small, but dangerous. I stepped forward. "Did you know?" I asked him. He looked at me, really looked at me, and for the first time I saw fear. "No," he said quietly. "I didn't." The possibility no one considered something didn't feel right. Yes, the evidence pointed to him. Yes, the account was his. But something deeper, something instinctive told me there was more. "Wait," I said. Everyone turned to me. "If someone used his account, that means they had access." Robert frowned. So, I continued, this wasn't just theft. It was set up. The word landed heavily, and suddenly the room shifted again. "The puzzle comes together, think about it," I said. "First, Mom takes a smaller amount, then the rest disappears, then Grandpa gets blamed. And now we find out the money was moved into Dad's account." I shook my head. "That's too perfect." Susan's expression changed slightly, like something had just clicked. "You're saying someone planned this?" she asked. "Yes," I said. "Someone who knew all of us." Someone who knew. My mother had accessed my father's account details, the family tensions, someone who knew exactly how to make it all fall apart. The hidden player, the lawyer flipped through his documents again. "There is one more detail," he said. We all looked at him. "There were communications," he continued, "between your mother and another individual." My heart sank. "What kind of communications?" "Emails, financial discussions." "Planning," my stomach twisted. "Planning what?" The lawyer hesitated, then said it. "The transfers." The truth about my mother, I felt like the ground disappeared beneath me. "She didn't just take money," I whispered. "No," the lawyer confirmed. "She was involved in the larger movement of funds." My chest tightened painfully. No, she wouldn't. She didn't act alone," he added quickly. And that changed everything again. The final piece, who was she working with? Robert asked. The question everyone feared. The lawyer looked at the document, then at us. "This individual," he said slowly, "had direct access to the family's financial systems and a personal relationship with your mother." I felt a cold wave of realization. Because suddenly a memory surfaced, not from childhood this time, but from later. A man who used to visit, someone I barely paid attention to back then. Someone my mother said was just helping with finances. "The second name, who is it?" Susan whispered. The lawyer didn't delay this time. "His name is," the interruption, "David Cole." The voice didn't come from the lawyer. It came from my father. The room went still. "You know him?" I asked, stunned. My father's jaw tightened. "I should have realized sooner," he said. "Realized what?" Robert asked. "That he was behind this. The real betrayal, David Cole," my father continued, "wasn't just a financial advisor." He paused, his voice heavy with regret. "He was someone your mother trusted. And," I pressed, he looked at me, straight into my eyes. "He was someone I trusted too." Everything falls apart, the pieces finally came together. My mother desperate, trying to fix a failing investment. David with access, knowledge, and opportunity. My father unknowingly positioned as the perfect scapegoat. My grandfather blamed and cast out. It wasn't one betrayal. It was a chain of them, carefully constructed, perfectly executed. The final realization, so he used her, I said slowly. And us, Susan added. And me, my father said quietly. Robert shook his head. Unbelievable. But deep down, it was completely believable, because the worst betrayals. They don't come from enemies, they come from people you trust. The new question, I looked at the lawyer. Where is he now? I asked. The lawyer closed the file. That, he said, is something we're still trying to determine. And just like that, the truth was finally out. But the story, it wasn't over, not even close. Because now, it wasn't just about what happened. It was about what we were going to do next. No one moved for a long time. The name David Cole still echoed in the room like a ghost that refused to leave. Years of silence, years of blame. And all of it built on a lie carefully planted by someone who knew exactly what he was doing. The man who wasn't there, so that's it, Robert said finally. We just sit here knowing some outsider destroyed this family and, what, move on. It's not that simple, the lawyer replied. It never is, Susan added quietly. I stood there trying to process it all. My mother, my father, my grandfather. None of them were innocent, but none of them were the whole story either. We need to find him, I said. All eyes turned to me. Daniel, my father began. No, I said firmly. This doesn't end with a name on a piece of paper. The last instruction, the lawyer cleared his throat. There is one final element to Mr. Harper's will. Of course there was. There always is, Robert muttered. The lawyer opened a smaller envelope, one that hadn't been touched until now. This was to be read only after the truth was uncovered. My heart tightened. Go ahead, I said. A message from the past, the lawyer unfolded the letter slowly. This is a personal statement from William Harper. And then he began to read. If you're hearing this, then the truth has finally come out. And if it has, then I was right to wait. I felt something catch in my chest. I was blamed for something I did not do. But I chose to leave not because I was guilty, but because I saw what the truth would do to this family. No one moved. No one even breathed. Your mother made a mistake. Your father made a choice. And the rest of you chose silence. Each word hit like it was meant for someone specific. Because it was. The real reason he left, I could have fought. I could have exposed everything. But I saw what was coming, a family tearing itself apart beyond repair. My eyes burned, because now I understood. He didn't leave because he had to. He left because he chose to protect what was left, even if it meant losing everything. The final condition, the lawyer continued. So I made a different choice. I waited. I watched. And I left everything behind, not as a gift, but as a test. A test. The word landed heavily. The inheritance will not bring you peace. Only truth will. And only if you face it together. The twist no one expected, the lawyer lowered the paper slightly. There's one last line, he said, and somehow it felt like the most important one. He read it slowly. If you have found the truth, then the inheritance does not belong to one of you. My heart skipped. What? The lawyer looked up. It is to be divided equally among all remaining family members. The reaction, that's impossible, Robert said immediately. The letter said, the initial claim named Daniel as the sole beneficiary, the lawyer explained. But that was conditional. Conditional on the truth, Susan whispered. Yes, he confirmed. I stood there, stunned. It was never about giving everything to me. It was about bringing us all here, forcing us to face what we had avoided for 15 years. The weight of it all, no one argued this time. No anger, no shouting, just silence. A different kind, not the kind that hides things, but the kind that comes after everything is finally exposed. Father and son, my father stepped closer to me. I'm sorry, he said quietly. I looked at him, really looked at him. For the first time, I didn't see just my father. I saw a man who made a mistake. A man who tried to protect his family and ended up breaking it. I know, I said, and somehow that was enough. For now, what about him? What happens to David Cole? Robert asked. The lawyer closed the file. An investigation is already underway, he said. With this new evidence, it won't take long. Justice, maybe not the kind we wanted, but something. The real inheritance as we walked out of that building later that day, no one talked about the money. Not really, because the truth. The truth had already cost more than any inheritance could ever replace. I looked at my family, still broken, still complicated, but no longer hiding. And maybe that was the real inheritance. Final line: some families are destroyed by secrets. Ours, we were finally forced to survive them. The end